Hello one and all, Mickey is Surviving RNG and welcome back to Phantom Doctrine for the final time. So this is going to be kind of a critique on Phantom Doctrine. Now to be clear, I did really enjoy Phantom Doctrine, and considering I edit all my videos, I spend like at least 4 hours on each video. If I wasn't enjoying Phantom Doctrine, I would have stopped playing it, but it does have a lot of issues. And now I want to talk about those issues because I do feel that the critique of people that enjoy a product of media is far more relevant than those critiquing something that they don't actually like to begin with. Hell, if I made a video like this for a sports game, it would never end. But then also my opinions of it would be far less relevant. So, as I said, I have a lot of issues with this game. The majority, though certainly not all of them, can fall into two general categories. One is the difficulty or the lack thereof. And yes, for those of you that haven't watched my series, firstly, I recommend that you do. We had a lot of fun there, but I was playing on hard mode and on Iron Man mode. I'm sorry, YouTube, I mean permadeath. I should never say Iron Man on YouTube. And even so, I found it incredibly easy. And almost always, when things went bad, I was just being absent-minded. Or rushing. And the other side of the coin is what I like to call stop wasting my time, XCOM 2. I'm sorry, I mean Phantom Doctrine. Yes, I'm doing that joke again. Never gets old. There are a lot of time-wasty aspects to the game, from gameplay mechanics to optimization to just incredibly long or slow animations. But for now, let's start off with the difficulty. Right, the Iron Man save is actually gone. But you know what? This save will do fine. So ignore the state of this campaign, guys. This was a side campaign. I was running it in parallel to the YouTube hard permadeath campaign. This campaign's in normal mode and not in permadeath. I haven't been giving anybody training or chems. I haven't been looting. We've barely got any armor and items. But you know what? For the purpose of this video, it doesn't make a difference. So before I say anything about the difficulty, guys, bear in mind if some of these things sound too difficult, then I would recommend it be a completely new difficulty, very hard mode or impossible mode, whatever you want to call it, doesn't make any difference. But the first thing is this game needs a better stealth system. Of course, these guys are agents, secret agents, so it makes sense that they're supposed to be doing the missions in a stealthy manner. But there are a lot of mechanics from, say, Invisible Ink that would be well suited to this game. On top of that, I think it'd go a long way, and I think I mentioned this in the series already, in the YouTube series, if there were tiers of enemies. So instead of there being agents at the top and everybody else at the bottom, guards and civilians, and if you knock out more than 1 or 2 guards and civilians, the agents get suspicious, there should be 3 tiers, with agents at the top, then officers underneath them, say 1 or 2 per mission, and then guards and civilians underneath them. And if you knock out 1 or 2 of a lower tier, the higher tier gets suspicious. That I think would go a long way into increasing the difficulty of the stealth sections. And speaking of which, although I don't have anybody here that's compromised, I actually went through the roster and checked, but I think compromised agents should be able to be detected easier on missions. So for example, let me go find a guard. There you go, you'll do. I think agents that are compromised should be able to be detected by normal guards, not civilians and not cameras, but normal guards within 2 tiles of them. So anybody that's got a compromised ID, if an agent almost bumps into them within this range of tiles, they should be detected. And if they're wearing heavy armor, then it goes from the 6 tile range and it increases it to 8 tiles. And if it's an agent, it increases their 8 tile range, which right now it's 5 because this guy's got actor, and increases it to 10. Basically, whatever the range would otherwise be, add 2 to it if the agent is compromised. That way it actually gives an incentive to buy new IDs for compromised agents, because as you progress through the game, especially in the mid-game, you end up with an A team that always stay at home, doing things like the comm room, making money, that kind of thing. They never head outside, so there's never any reason to buy them new ID, because they're not out in the world, they're not going to get ambushed. So this way actually gives agents that go on missions a reason to have IDs that are not compromised. The next thing is to have more guards on the map. Now I don't know how this can work, because I kind of feel the game engine is limited to 10 guards per map, or at least thereabouts, but I feel the guards and or civilians should be positioned more tactically. For example, you could have a civilian here, leaning against that wall, not moving, staring at the camera. That way you can't turn off the camera. Or having guards that patrol in pairs, that quite often end up looking at each other. That way you can't knock out one without knocking out the other, unless you use distract, for example. Basically, if you can't add more civilians and guards to the map, have them placed in more tactical positions. And also, when you fail a mission, I'll just load back to the Geoscape, it should require you to do the tactical recon for that mission again. Now for base assaults, no big deal. It'll just slow you down by, I don't know, like 6 hours I think it takes to do a tactical recon. But for other missions around the map, which I don't currently have one, those missions are on time limits, so if you fail the mission or extract before the mission objective is done, you have to do the tactical recon again, and you may not have time to do it, at which point you have to make the strategic choice. Do you go blind and do a no tactical recon mission, or do you let the mission slide and eat whatever the heat, the danger, or the avatar geoscape bar, whatever you want to call it, increase? But yeah, I've always found it odd that you can leave or flee from a mission and the tactical recon's still done, as if the enemy wouldn't switch up their patrols or replace guards. Hell, when you do fail a mission and go back to it, sometimes the map is actually different. Not always, but sometimes. And then, talking about the global Geoscape timer. Although I hate timers in games, I really do, I kind of feel this timer should be here all the time, this bar. Now, most of the time it is. I think this one in particular has been here since, what, like chapter 6, I think, maybe 5? But I think it should be here all the time. And maybe as you do story missions, it goes down to counteract any kind of increase you've had. Because one of the things I've found in this campaign, this normal mode non-permadeath campaign, is that I've just been skipping everything. I've been doing tactical recon for any of the missions coming up. If I couldn't interrupt them, I just ignored them. And I haven't done any missions on this campaign other than story missions since, what, like chapter 3 or 4? And that's just crazy. And sure, you know, it's a strategic choice. You end up with enemy cells that are eating away at your danger bar, and you don't have a lot of loot to head out on missions with, or to sell in case of emergencies. But even so, there needs to be more of an incentive to not just skip everything. And right, about skipping everything. When you move base, there should be a timer that appears after you've moved that prevents you from doing anything within the base. Say, for example, 6 hours or 12 hours, maybe even have it depend on the difficulty, but there needs to be an incentive to buy the more expensive hideouts that have no danger, as opposed to the really cheap ones that have initial danger already. Basically, the idea being that when you move base, there's a delay for people to unpack everything. As you see in the cinematic when you move, you know, screw it, I'll just show it. There you go, that'll do. This cinematic here, you see them moving stuff around, and during these 6 or 12 or however many hours would be best in terms of balance, you can't do the comm room or the forgery, people won't heal, can't build things at the workshop, you can't do analytics, do chems in body engineering, or have any treatments be done in the MK Ultra facility. And anything that is already being done when you do move just simply gets put on hold. So an interrogation will be just stuck on hold. Because as I said, I've been skipping so much time in this campaign, doesn't matter how many cells have appeared, and just moving base when it maxes out. That'd be another incentive to actually do the things that appear on the map. And right, agents that get left behind on missions, either during ambushes if the mission fails completely, or just leaving somebody behind. Normally what would happen is the danger increases by, what, like 40, 50? Then the agent turns up like, I don't know, 6 or 12 hours later on 1 health. And maybe sometimes they will have some sort of brainwashing done to them, but in my personal experience, both this campaign and the YouTube campaign, the hard mode permadeath campaign, no one that returned to base had any kind of mind control effects done to them. Firstly, I think that chance of it happening should be greatly increased, if not adding multiple brainwashing techniques to them. One being like enemy spy, where it increases danger by 3 every turn, or every hour, I mean. And the other one I think is their version of control phrase, or is it Mason Gambit, where if you take them on a mission and combat starts, they turn sides and you basically lost them forever unless you take them back alive and then brainwash them. But basically that should happen more often if you leave an agent behind. And also the time it takes for them to get home should also be increased. Hell, maybe even have this dependent on the amount of damage they took in their last hit, how close they were to bleeding out. You know, basically the worst state they were in when the mission ended, that should increase the amount of time it takes for them to get home. Or just make it random, whatever. And then just to even things out, when they do get back home, don't simply leave them on 1 health, give them a random dice roll between 1 and 10 or 20, just to mix things up. Or hell, again, maybe base it on the damage they took on the last hit, or how close they were to bleeding out, you know, whatever. And the last thing I have to say about the difficulty, which would also help out in the early part of the game, which is incredibly slow, my god it is slow, is have all the mission types unlocked from the start of the game. When you start the game, enemy recon is only 1 mission type. The enemy mission type of whatever increases this bar here, again, that's only 1 mission type. It's bomb disposal. Destroying enemy cells is also only 1 mission type, although that doesn't even appear until, what, like chapter 2, I think? Basically have all the mission types available, not simply to increase the difficulty, but also to get rid of the fact that the early game is so slow, and forgive me for saying so, pretty damn boring, because you have so few agents that you have to do all the missions appear, and all those missions are the same, and because you have so few gear and upgraded agents, you have to do those missions in the same way, again with no proper support options. It makes the early part of the game so boring. I know a lot of you guys in the comments have mentioned the exact same thing. Oh right, and actually forgot about this. I'll be cutting this earlier into the video. The damage frag grenades do should be reduced by like 5 damage, I think, and the damage that cluster bombs do should be reduced by 10, maybe even 15, because it's very XCOM 2-esque, where so many situations can be dealt with simply by using explosives. It's like, why would you use a grenade that impairs the enemy when most of the time you can just one-shot them with a cluster bomb? So now on to the stop wasting my time Phantom Doctrine part of this video, which is going to cover mini cinematics, animations, and optimization between both. So I'm going to give you examples of how the game needs to be sped up. So let's start with this. You see this pause here? Why is this pause here? Clearly the game is loading this cinematic, but why? Can't it load it while you're in that pre-mission setup? And again, this cinematic, is so long. So yeah, these things I won't be fast forwarding. If you watch my YouTube campaign, you know that I cut my videos very heavily, and that certainly includes all the things I'm going to talk about right now. Of course, starting with that cinematic. That pause at the beginning of the cinematic, when it was just a blank black screen. Why is it there? Can't it load that cinematic while you're doing the pre-mission setup? And the same, of course, you know what that'll do? Goes for this. Why black screen? I know it was only there for a second, but why is it there? All these little mini cinematics, can't it have them loaded in the background? Now you might say, well, you know, maybe most people's computers don't have the RAM for it, but when the game's installed, can't it simply check to see if you do have the RAM for that capacity? And it can load all these mini cinematics. I don't really want to do the other ones because of trigger combat, so have them be loaded in the background so when you activate them, it does it immediately. And in terms of the length of the cinematic, considering, that'll do, that these cinematics are pretty much the same, well, they are the same every single time, only the intros and outros are a tiny bit different. Cut them down and speed them up. I'm sure I'll give you an example now of what I think those little cinematics should look like. When they're exactly the same every single time, or they're incredibly similar every single time, make them much shorter. Now don't get me wrong, I know you can just skip them, I know you can, but that's the thing, I don't want to skip them, I do enjoy watching them, but I also think they're incredibly long for what they are at least. So now let's move on to other stop wasting my time stuff. Sickle if you would. Do you see that pause there? Why is that pause there? Game, do you want to tell me why is that? Do you notice how the camera zooms back to the agent when you do an action? Ritual, if you'd like to demonstrate? There you go. They won't do the action until the camera is zoomed back to them. Why is that? It is so annoying. So yeah, get rid of that really annoying snap back to agent before they start performing their animation. It is incredibly annoying. If I've got my camera in one location, it's because I'm telling them to do the action in that location. More annoying slow stuff, speaking of which. This is exactly why I gave you the Juggernaut Armor Mark II. What the hell is with this animation? Yeah, I get it's realistic. I get it. But it is so damn slow. And I've only used the Juggernaut Armor, versions 1 and 2, only in 2 missions in the entire game. And yet it is that slow. I don't understand how other people can stand it, doing, you know, more combat-based missions, at least doing them more frequently, and using Juggernaut Armor all the time. As I said, I get it, it's realistic, but fun over realism always. If you want to give them a different walking animation, then do that. And you know what, fine, make him move a tiny bit slower, just so it's noticeable. But don't make him move that slowly. And I know, guys, this can seem really nitpicky. I was actually in 2 minds about making this video at all, but all of these little things that slow down the game really adds up. Turn-based games are slow as is. Phantom Doctrine is slower still, because it has a stealth section then a combat section. Then anytime you have animations like this, Ritual, this is why I brought you, you're the only person who has Sprinter, let's see how long it is before I can actually move you again. So, take your shot. And okay, we can move you again. Why is that necessary? Again, you might think that's really nitpicky, but is it though? If you have a squad of 6 people and you perform the stim on them, it can take nearly 20 seconds. Of what? Just watch them perform the exact same animation over and over again? Now compare that to XCOM and the run and gun ability. You simply activate it and that's it. You hear a sound and it's done. Now that's not necessarily a better way of doing it. I am certainly not saying that it's better to not have animations, but don't have them be that intrusive to the gameplay. First there's a pause, having the camera go back over to them, then the animation takes like what, 5-6 seconds to do, then there's another pause of 1 or 2 seconds before you can move that agent again. And sure, I do know that you can move one person and switch to another character and move them while the other person is moving, but what you can do during that time is incredibly limited. I don't know if I can pull this off. Yeah, nobody in here. For example, Ritual, do you want to go there? Then we'll go to you, and you can see you can't actually perform a lot. There you go, now it's updated. So your actions are incredibly limited while a person's moving, and that applies to performing animations. So like doing a stim, if you move to another character, you can't perform a stim while the first person's doing a stim. And again, it sounds nitpicky, but using XCOM as a comparison, and I do mean XCOM 1, not 2, you can cycle through the characters in XCOM 1 and press the R button when each character is selected, just tab R, tab R, tab R over and over again, and everybody reloads their gun. You don't need to wait for them to finish their reload animation before the next person can do it. Now XCOM 2 kind of does this, but it bugs out quite a lot, which really annoyed me. Again, like this, it was wasting a lot of time. And in a similar sense in XCOM, when you Overwatch, again, tab Y, tab Y, tab Y. You don't need to wait for the animation to finish before you can move on to the next person and give them something to do. Ritual, would you? And wait for it. There you go. We can't do anything until the camera is snapped back. Another incredibly slow animation, which don't worry, I think everybody's got the point, I won't show it, is taking photos of documents. The amount of time it takes for the character to lean in, slow take their camera out, take the picture, and then lean back again. Granted, this is a computer, not a document, but you get the picture. Pick them up. Put them down. So, moving on. Let's see if anybody gets detected. yeah, the next thing I want to talk about is how long the enemy turns take to tick over. Now, bear in mind, this is outside of combat, right? Outside of combat. And it takes that long. When you're in combat, you know what? Here, this will do. Hi, how you doing? Yep. And we'll just wait. Let's see how long it takes the turn to tick over. Again, that stepping out to the side is really, really slow. It's painfully slow. You know what? I probably fast-forwarded that. It was my intention to show you it fully, but that was so long. It was so long. And granted, yeah, when they're doing animations, as slow as those animations are, it does make sense that the turns are going to be longer. But like when the turns being taken weren't on the screen, it's so long. And also, I know I wouldn't mention animations anymore, but guys, I really have to. This really, really bugs me, and you guys that watch my series, you'll notice I do a cut whenever I do this. By default, they hold their primary weapon. If you tell them to use their secondary weapon, they'll put it away before they actually shoot. Now, that seems like such a small thing, but I kind of wish that when you switched between these weapons, the character would actually take out the weapon that you got selected. That way, when you go to shoot, they already have the right weapon out. Again, it would have been a nice thing to have, because there are so many things that slow the game down. But you know what? Enough about those animations. Let's move on to how the missions play out. Now, how I play them out is I will knock out everybody. The only people that won't get knocked out are civilians that are in isolated locations and absolutely not moving. Those are the only people that won't get knocked out. And I have a solution to this, right? What if, instead of encouraging the player to knock out everybody to get the most amount of XP, and also to make it easier when you're retreating out the mission, ideally you don't want anybody in your way, especially if you accidentally trigger, you're going to want as few people on the map conscious as possible. How about have it be so that if you only do the mission objective and you don't knock out anybody else, not including the agents, give a big bonus to XP that's granted to everybody that was on that mission, and have that bonus be at minimum 50% more than you would get if you were to knock out everybody on the map. And you might think that's OP, but bear in mind, if you played like that, it would be far more difficult. But it also means that the missions don't all play out the same. The second half of the mission won't always be your agents just running around the map knocking people out. And I actually think that'd be a good idea. And on top of that, it'd be nice to give the player an actual choice. Be safer and knock everybody out, or play riskier, get more XP, and only do the mission objectives. Okay, the next thing about wasting my time. These items, all interactable items, need to be far more visible. Now you might think, oh, you know, how could you miss that? You know, it's glowing. Again, if you watch my series, you'll know, I'm actually trying to find one now, how ironic. There you go. That glowing bits of paper are actually very easy to miss. Number one, make this glow bigger, ideally twice as big, and have that applied to everything. Number two, when an agent walks into a room that has interactable items, have them flash twice, just to grab the player's attention. Say for example, if they're in a corner, like that is right there, you wouldn't see if you walked into the room, but if they flashed, you would see there was something there behind the terrain. Next thing is, which you know what, screw it, I'll just tick over the term, perfect example, while they're fighting, no, camera, okay, this might actually be hell. As you can see, this computer here, which was interactable, or is interactable, isn't highlighted. During the enemy's turn, all the highlights for objects, all the interactable objects, they stop being highlighted. Like this mission objective here, it's not highlighted anymore. Why is this? Why on enemies' turns are these things not highlighted? For the first, what, like 3, 4, maybe 5 missions of my YouTube series, I thought they remained highlighted. And during the enemy's turn, because we weren't in combat, I was actually looking for objects to grab, so to use my time better. Don't worry, people are dying. So yeah, to use my time better, I was looking for objects to grab during the enemy's turn without realising they weren't highlighted anymore. But again, why is that? There's just no reason for it. They should remain highlighted during the enemy's turn. Oh, and then this old chestnut. Right, so I don't have the best example, but I've certainly encountered it on more than one occasion. Documents, right, these documents. And hell, even these bombs would be a good idea. They should be interactable from every angle you can access it from. So for example, the bomb, you should be able to access it from here as well as from here. Not just one arbitrary side that was picked whenever the object was placed. Same with the document. Now granted, the document can only be grabbed from this side, but I've seen it on many occasions. Say for example, you get rid of these chairs and the document's on the end of the table, you can only grab it from one side, not the other. For the love of God, let the player grab it from whatever angle they can get to it from. Now sure, it doesn't make sense if it's a computer. Again, it'll only make sense from one angle, or a safe as well, that's fine, grab it from one angle. But documents and things like these bombs, whatever angle you can get to it, you should be allowed to do it. And then mines. Oh my God, wow, mines. So I don't have any with me because they're rubbish. I never ever take them with me. They're crap. map allow your agents to throw mines like, I don't know, 4 tiles, like this far? It really doesn't have to be far at all, but the mines as they are so bad, they're horrible. You have to walk over and place them like right one adjacent square to where you are. They're such a pain in the arse to use. 4 tiles really isn't a lot, especially when you compare it to a grenade. Allow the player to throw them 4 tiles. And then, where is it? Always use shortest path. This I feel should be on a hotkey, which, just to make sure that I'm not being a moron, is not. No, it's not. This absolutely needs to be on a hotkey. And in general, I would normally have that off, then activate the hotkey when I actually want the agent to take the shortest, more direct path at risk of whatever it might trigger. But sometimes having always take shortest path on makes them do the stupidest things. And also, by comparison, having it off, again, makes them take the most convoluted, out-of-the-way routes. Having it on a shortcut on a hotkey would be a really nice touch. Right, and then, when you overwatch, as far as I'm aware, when you overwatch with pistols, I think you fire between 3 times or 5 times, and when you breach, I have no damn clue. But basically, when you got weapon selected, on the gear screen of the character, it shows how many times they will shoot on Overwatch, and when you do a breach with any given weapon, that information should also be here, just so you know what's better to use for any given situation. And next is, you guys see me do this a lot, say for example, we're not actually in combat at the minute, if you go to a door that doesn't have windows, you lean on a wall outside it, and what's that? There's an agent right here, looking this direction, and you open the door, you get spotted. Now, I know this might make the game easier, but following Invisible Ink's lead, this would really speed up how the game plays. It almost forces a player, and if you watch my series, you know I do this every single time, when you go to a door, you tile scan, close the door, as an example. Let's say we don't have vision in this room. In fact, if you would, go there, sickle, close the door, there you go. I would tile scan 3 tiles out from the opposite side of the door to where my agent is, to see if there are any agents here. And, ironically, he's not actually getting highlighted. Normally they do get highlighted. But yeah, I would tile scan and see that there's an agent here. It would get highlighted with orange, indicating that I can knock somebody out even though I can't see them. Although granted, looking at this, I'd be able to see I can walk this far into the room, but I can't walk any further around here. So I'd know there'd be something there. To get rid of this cheesy tactic entirely, have it be like Invisible Ink, where if you're leaning on one side of the wall, even if there was an agent, like right here, looking this direction, they wouldn't see you. Again, oh, but Mickey, it's realistic. No. Fun over realism always. And having full cover block the enemy's line of sight only while you're in stealth would really speed up your progress during the stealth portion of the game. And lastly, a little bit nitpicky, especially after talking about how the game should be more difficult, when you extract, it should tell you if you're about to fail the mission. And you might think, oh, but Mickey, you know, you should just pay attention. Yeah, you should, but say, for example, like happened to me once in Invisible Ink, you go to the extract, you try to leave, and the game tells you, hey, you know you actually haven't done the objective for this mission? And lo and behold, I hadn't. I'd left a important key card that we needed off in a hallway somewhere, because I needed the room, and I dropped it thinking I'd pick up later, and then I had to make a tactical choice. Do I stay and try to get the key card back, or do I then just leave? It's not that big a deal if the game just told you that you're going to fail a mission if you hadn't done the objective yet and you're about to leave. So that is enough of stop wasting my time during missions. Let's head to the Geoscape. So, stop wasting my time on the Geoscape. Hey, so who's here in Denver? Catfish and Oxide? What if I went to move you to Chicago? I'd click on Chicago, click on Oxide and Catfish. It says they'll be there in 2 hours, and then travel. How about instead of doing that, you click and hold on a location, then drag to a new location, and it'll have a line following your mouse cursor, and then while holding down the mouse cursor over a new location, it will show how long to get there, then you let go, and whoever's at the location would move to the new location. Now, of course, leave the old method of moving in there for situations like, you know, I only want to bone meal and sickle from the base to go to London, but it'd make things so much easier and quicker if I could just drag and drop these guys here to, say, there. Again, it'd only save a few seconds, but there are a lot of seconds wasted in this game. Okay, next. Hey, game, how much damage did my frag grenade do? How much better is the cluster bomb? Compare that to the proximity mine. Is that more damage than the cluster bomb? What if I wanted to compare the damage over time effects of the CS gas, blister gas, and or the acid cloud? Which one does more damage over time? And how long are the effects of things like awareness regeneration or movement speed penalty? How many turns they last? Or bleeding ammo and poison ammo? Bleeding, for a fact, I know does 10 damage a turn. How much does poison ammo do? Or the snipers? Great example. These snipers, I know for a fact, the silenced one does 100 damage. So 100 damage regardless of how much awareness the target has. The loud one does 150 damage if the target isn't on full awareness, and 50 if they are. But again, I only learnt this by taking those items out on a mission. Guys, just have the information here. Let me choose what I think is best for the mission. And speaking of lack of information, these perks increases movement range. By how much? I mean, I'll take it. Improves benefits of half cover. By how much? Improves benefits of full cover. Again, by how much? Martial artist decreases awareness cost of takedowns. By how much? Is it 5 awareness? Is it 50? Are these perks worth getting? Overwatch field remains circular circular for a wider radius. By how many tiles? Combat senses, increase maximum awareness. By how much? Savior, again, how much health does it give? I'm pretty sure it gives 20, but I've only realised that through experience. Masochist increases innate armour. By how much? Oh, here it is. This is the one that I was looking for. Gifted, boost XP for missions. By how much? Because I checked. I went to the wiki, and it turns out, and you guys probably don't know this, the amount of XP you get from Gifted is plus 5%. What? Plus 5%? I would never, ever pick this if I knew that was the only XP you'd get. 5% extra XP. I mean, compare it to XCOM in Long War, where there's a perk that you get, I think, 20% extra XP for the kills you get, or 25% extra XP for soldiers at sergeant rank or lower, and this is 5% extra XP. Are you kidding? If it actually gave me the information and said it here, I wouldn't pick it. Oh man. Okay, so when you've got an agent selected, and it took me a long time to realise this, but it's actually really useful, and you click on their background, it will show all the weapons they can use, as well as all their abilities and their passives. And it's a really neat and tidy way, instead of going through and putting your cursor on each one of these to find out what weapons they can use, or skimming these to find out what perks they got. Click on that, and it has all the information right here. Could you please maybe have that also work when you're hiring an agent? Like you click on that, which you can't, and it would have all the weapons they can use, as well as all the perks they've got, nice and neat, as it is for here. And then, oh god, you guys knew this would come up. Warhead, you've got maximum action points 3, which means you have chems. You've had chemical treatment. And I know that because we actually have the option to remove them. So Warhead, what chems have you got? Why is it such a big deal that I'm not allowed to know what chems you've had? I mean, if you look at it from a realism story point of view, he would tell you what chems he's got, in case you tried to give him something that he can't have, and it would kill him. And speaking of which, considering so many of these guys have got chems, as you can see, max action points 3, 3, 3. What are their base stats? Just have a little number for circulatory, respiratory, sensory, and motoric next to their current stats to indicate what their base stat is. That way, if you intend to do a planned out chem tree for them, you know if that person is eligible to reach a certain threshold for whatever you want for respiratory or circulatory. But the only way you'd know is if you went into the body engineering and click remove. But is that necessary? Just show the information. And of course, this also applies to when you hire agents. Again, what are their base stats? What chems they had? Hell, it'd be nice to know if you guys have had the first 3 or 4 chems just by coincidence of a chem path that I intend to take, but I don't know that. So the first thing I do is go to body engineering and then remove all the chems you've got. Just have it show all the chems you've had as well as your base stats. But oh man, okay. So this thing is, I guess, more of a YouTube thing, but I suppose it might just bug normal players as well. Why is it with an agent? When you go to customize them, you can't change their name. It's like I can change everything about how they look. I can give them plastic surgery, but I can't say, you know what, from now on, you're gonna be called, first thing that comes to mind, hairbrush. That's what I'm calling you. Why can't I change your name here? Now, don't get me wrong, I don't mean they should be allowed to get a new ID for free. That should also be its own thing. You should be allowed to change their name without having to pay for it. It just seems like a good idea when it's a game in the vein of XCOM, where some players want to change all the names of their soldiers, or in this case, agents, to be whatever the hell they want it to be. Alright, let's pretend we're doing this mission again. So, I have a medkit. I know I do. In fact, I probably have 3. And a lockpick, for example. Where is it? I'd love to know where it is. And sure, there are buttons here that say remove all agents, remove all support, make all items available, but I don't want to remove all of the items off of everybody else, because they need them in case they get ambushed. So just show me in weapons and armor and equipment, the items that are taken up, and when you click on it, show a list of the people that have them, then click on that person, and it will take that item from that person and give it to this person here. That way, I don't have to click make all items available, then everybody in the base, all of their items and armor get unequipped, including all the mods. It will just save so much time. This isn't like XCOM where when they get back to base, they shouldn't be holding any items or weapons or armor. In Phantom Doctrine, they need it. They need to have their best weapons. They need to have the best armor that you've got available. And as for equipment, they might as well have the equipment you otherwise wouldn't use. But on occasion, you might actually want to use it. Maybe you want to take an extra medkit. Maybe one of your agents are injured and you want to heal somebody on a mission, and you normally only take 1 medkit, meaning the other medkit is on an agent somewhere, so you have to go through each person looking for that medkit. It's just a waste of time. And of course, if we're going to talk about wasting time, how could I not mention the intel boards? My god, the intel boards. When I first started playing this game, I found the intel boards satisfying in the sense of, you know, it was kind of busy work, but it was satisfying to finish, right? It had that satisfaction of neatly stacking things in a pile and having your brain tell you, well done, you finished a task. But by the midway point of the campaign, I found this, looking for the keywords, clicking on stuff, and I know you might say, oh, but you should read them and find out what they are. I found it to be such a damn chore, especially for some of the longer documents. documents. And this isn't even really a long document, but it became such a damn chore I couldn't stand it. And by the time I got to the end of the game, I found this entire Intel board mechanic to be so mind-numbingly boring. In XCOM, you spend about 90% of your time on a mission, with the other 10% being, you know, just at base, passing time, deciding what to research, that kind of thing. But in Phantom Doctrine, you typically spend, I would say, 40 to 50% maximum in missions, and the rest of the time at base. And the majority of that time is spent doing these goddamn Intel boards, and I am so sick of them. As I said, when I first started playing, I found them to be alright. I know a lot of people complained, and I heard those complaints, I really did. A lot of people said this was just busy work, it was a waste of time, they wished it wasn't there, and I disagreed with them to begin with. But by the end of the game, my god, I can't play this game again while this entire Intel board mechanic is here. I can't. Something needs to be done about it. At minimum, there needs to be an option to make it so that the keywords are highlighted instantly. So just go in, click, 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 done. Now, of course, you might say, oh, well, you know, Mickey, if you don't want to do the Intel boards, just have people doing analytics. And I was. For this campaign, this medium mode, non-permadeath campaign, I was having people do analytics. And Clover and Marlin here, I believe, there you go, yeah, they both solve files faster. But even so, this damn thing fully upgraded, fully manned, and having two people that are skilled at doing it, it would take so long for them to complete. No joke, a 20 Intel board would take them like an in-game week. It was insane. This analytics is not an option at all. Certainly not if you're playing on hard mode. But either way, something needs to be done about this, because I've done it for so long I cannot stand it anymore. But you know what, that is enough about the two main portions of my issues with Phantom Doctrine, this being the conclusion of the stop wasting my time. So let's move on to kind of miscellaneous stuff. Okay, so some of these might seem a little bit nitpicky, but I found it to be really annoying that the agents have audio barks. As you can see, when they're selected, especially that guy, he swore, I probably bleeped that out, but when they're selected, they have audio barks. I'd really much prefer it to be like XCOM, where they only talk when you have them do an action. So go there. Okay, she didn't say anything. Go here. Okay, now you don't want to say anything, no? Go over there. Nothing? No? Okay, she's not saying anything, fine. But I'd really prefer if they just didn't have audio barks. I wish there was an option in audio that was simply a tick box for audio barks. And as I said, this might sound nitpicky, but especially from a YouTuber's point of view, most YouTubers that play turn-based games will do the majority of their thinking and talking before they do an action. Then while they do an action, they'll stop talking for a second and let the action do whatever it's doing. But cycling through characters and having the agents talk over you is such a pain. It's really annoying. And next up, this, I don't know if it's a bug or not, or if it's intentional, but God knows how other YouTubers or anybody in general has played this game, going combat focused, wearing these exposed heavy armor. But whenever you start the mission and you're given locations, in fact, screw it, if I'm going to show you my issues with the game, I might as well actually, you know, show them. When you're doing the intro to the mission, firstly, before you actually get into the mission, it should show on the map what areas are restricted and what areas aren't. Because picking an area to infiltrate and then finding out, hey, this entire area is restricted, and any second now a guard can walk into you, even though you're wearing concealed armor, it seems almost like a bug, like a massive oversight. And on top of that, the one time I went into a mission, that wasn't a story mission, wearing revealed armor, I triggered immediately. Why? Say for example here, I loaded in here, and hey, there was a guard right here staring at us, triggered the alarm immediately. Because he saw that we were wearing revealed armor, and combat started straight away, the moment we touched down. That, again, I think is incredibly stupid. Any of these spawn points, the game should calculate and see if there's any vision of anybody on the map that can see within this box. And if they can, it should do one of two things. Either move that person, change the angle of that person, or if the first two can't be done, remove them entirely. For example, this camera here, I think it maybe can see that tile, which granted you can see the camera right now, that's fair enough, but still it should move things out of your infiltration point, and you should be able to see what areas are restricted and what areas aren't. The next issue, which is kind of a bit nitpicky, but I think it'll really help new players. Let's see if I can actually recreate the problem. Let's knock you out and leave you here. In the path of you. Then we're going to go hide there. Okay, and then we'll tick over and we'll see what happens. Wait for it. Yeah, we get it. Let's try that again, because it didn't exactly work. Let's try it again. So yeah, I can't exactly recreate the problem, but the general idea is, when concealment is broken, the camera should zoom to that location, kind of like it was doing there. But in my experience, that doesn't actually happen. Concealment would get broken, for whatever reason, but you can't work out what happened. Now, sure, sometimes it's for story reasons and actually says, like, force majeure or whatever the word is, but ironically, after me complaining about how much time is being wasted in this game, that is one of those situations where everything should stop, the camera should fly over and zoom in to that situation, even if you can't see them, it should reveal line of of sight just for a moment and show you what broke concealment and who was it that spotted it. Next one, kind of in a similar light, is when enemy reinforcements are coming, or more specifically when they arrive, there should be an audio cue, a very clear audio cue, or hell, just have the camera swing over to that location to indicate enemy reinforcements arrived from here. So say for example, this is the end of the enemy's turn and enemy reinforcements just arrived, the camera would swing over to, say for example, this corner and zoom in into the darkness. We wouldn't see them, it would just zoom into the darkness and we'd know that's where the enemy reinforcements came from. Now you might say, oh, you know, that's kind of cheaty, especially when I complain about the game being too easy, but from a realism standpoint, especially when it coincides with actually having fun, it would make sense if we could hear where the reinforcements were coming from. That way, if you're trying to evacuate, you go in the opposite direction. Or hell, maybe you want to stall them and set up ambushes. But either way, maybe an XCOM style audio cue where you hear like sound waves come from that direction, or as I said, just have the camera kind of go over there, zoom in, just into the fog of war, not see anything, and then you know that's where the reinforcements came from. Now the next one I'm not entirely sure about, but it has bugged me quite a bit. Outside of combat, it goes your moves, then the enemy's moves, and then the civilians' moves. But once you go into combat, it follows the same kind of pattern, except civilians can do a reaction move. If you move near them, they can then move as well. And I don't really know how I feel about that, because on more than one occasion, they have screwed me over, where I'd set up an ambush inside of a room, intentionally closing a door, move somebody else, get in proximity of a civilian, and that civilian will charge through the door and leave it open. Because of course, when you're in combat, and you pass through a door, unlike in concealment mode, it doesn't reclose the door. As you can see, if you're in combat, that door would stay open. Okay, and the next one is, don't worry guys, we're getting to the end of this list, allow the player to zoom the camera at will without changing the floor that you're looking at. Now there is actually a zoom function, it's an incredibly annoying one, and not to mention it does the opposite of what I want. You zoom out slightly. That's it. It's not the slider, you just press the button, you zoom out slightly. So there's no way to actually zoom in further. And again, this is kind of nitpicky, but as I mentioned, compare it to XCOM, there are two different zoom functions where one changes floors and the other one actually controls the height of the camera without changing floors. It would be nice to have that functionality here as well. Okay, now this is something that bugged the hell out of me. I'm actually recording this after having recorded the rest of the video, because even though it was on my list, I missed it somehow, but it was so clear in my mind the moment I stopped recording, I was like, how the hell did I miss it? So guys, what do you see right now when I'm moving the camera? Because I would bet you see an absolute blurry mess. You can see sweet F all when I'm doing this. Why is there no option in graphics to remove blurring? Now I know if you put post-processing down to very low, it does get rid of the blurring, but it also makes the game look like crap. Why is there simply not an option to remove the blurring entirely? By comparison, if you did this in XCOM, it would be crystal clear, but in Phantom Doctrine, it is just such a blurry mess. Now of course, don't get me wrong, this is exacerbated by the fact that A, the footage is recorded, B, I edit the footage and then re-render it, which makes it worse, then C gets uploaded onto YouTube, and they do processing of their own, which of course exacerbates the blurring problem even more. No joke, I sincerely believe that this has impacted the views of Phantom Doctrine on my channel, and I would bet on other people's channels as well. Seeing that when somebody moves the camera from one place to another, it looks like this, I would bet, absolutely bet, it's impacted views of the game. So devs and all game devs out there, please have an option for no blurring at all, ever. Best case scenario, blurring isn't noticeable. Worst case scenario, and it's like this. And lastly, when you go to hire an agent, why are there only ever 5 agents here? Why is this a thing? Firstly, the number of agents that can be hired, or at least in the agent hire list, should be practically infinite, and there should just be a timer on each one. Or hell, maybe even have it be a percentage timer. So it starts with 0%, then as time passes, the percent timer goes up and up, increasing the likelihood that they'll get hired by the enemy. Or make it simpler still, just give them hours. Have a little timer next to their name with a number of hours, and when that timer runs out, they leave and go join the enemy faction. But the fact that there are only 5 possible agents to be recruited at any given time, not including story agents, and the fact that when you reveal new agents to be hired, the eldest ones get kicked off the list, it's so infuriating, especially seeing as, say for example, this guy right here, Torpedo, seems like a good agent. He's got 3 training ready to go, he's got Survivor, he's got 6 perks good to go, as well as combat senses. He seems to be a very, very good agent. But what if, for example, you did an intel board, you finished it off, and all you got were 3 new agent candidates, and you thought, wow, what a massive waste of time this was. Then you go back to here and it turns out that really awesome agent you wanted is gone, because the 3 agents you actually spent time revealing, they've taken her place. Why is that a thing at all? If agent candidate reveals are actually supposed to be some sort of reward for doing things, then why does it get rid of other agents? I think this counter, as I said, should be basically infinite and everybody should be on a timer. So yeah guys, that is my thoughts on Phantom Doctrine, at least my critiques of it. As I mentioned when I started the video, I certainly feel the critiques of somebody that has played through the game and more importantly enjoyed it are far more relevant than somebody that hasn't played through it in its entirety and didn't enjoy it at all, because their opinion would be more biased. But I do feel this game does have a lot of issues, and I really hope that in a DLC or hell even a sequel, a lot of these issues get resolved, because as it stands, I really hate to say it, I don't think I'd play this game again. Did I enjoy it? I absolutely did. I really enjoyed it. In fact, there are a lot of aspects of it, as I mentioned, the Geoscape, that I wish XCOM 2 did. Like, imagine if in XCOM 2 you didn't have any engineers or scientists, you only had soldiers. Because you've got Rebellion, you're not playing like it's XCOM 1 where you have an actual military with designated careers. In a Rebellion, everybody has to be everything at any given time. It could be like this, where everybody that's working at the base, comms, forgery, workshop, analytics, they're all agents. So say for example in XCOM 2, all of your soldiers are not just soldiers but also engineers and scientists, and their skills at any given task is based on a stat. Now of course most of their primary skills are going to be how good they are as a soldier, aim, mobility, will, health, that kind of thing, but then they have an engineer stat and a scientist stat. By comparison, Phantom Doctrine has things like these perks that make them better at doing certain tasks. Something similar like that in XCOM 2 would have been awesome. That way when you go out on a mission you have to decide, like here, do I pull somebody off what they're currently doing and have that progress be lost, or do I take somebody else? But yeah guys, as I mentioned, I have really enjoyed this game, but unfortunately I can't picture myself playing it again. I really hate to be mean like that, but I did find a lot of issues with the game, as you guys no doubt saw if you're listening to this point. So guys, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to close range to that thumbs up button and let anybody else know if they enjoyed the video as well. It really helps out the channel. And I'll see you guys back next time for another video in another series. Thanks for watching guys, and bye bye everyone. Bye bye.